It's an early, damp morning, and I'm walking pretty fast to the hospital that I've been working with the last couple of weeks. I have a firm face and a fast pace because we have some serious problems in the hospital. First of all, we're not earning any money, so the cash flow is really bad. In fact, we're just serving a couple of patients each day. Secondly, the salaries that we do pay are below the minimum standard in the city, which is an offense. So you can go to jail for not paying the minimum salary. And thirdly, we found out that the operational permit of the hospital has actually not been renewed in 1 year. So as you can see, we have some serious problems. I also want to check in on the renovation project that we have been doing the last couple of weeks. I rush into the lobby, and I'm very surprised when I'm greeted with the buckets on the floor, and I look up to the ceiling and I see some really disturbing stains. That blue thing over there, that's our X-ray machine, picking up water that drips down from the floor above. How can that be? I run out again, and I'm greeted by this. What's wrong with this picture? No roof. There's no roof on the hospital. And it's been raining heavily the last couple of weeks. So I go back in again and I see more and more disturbing things of actually something being really bad. Water is dripping down into our pharmacy or electrical fuse box. Even Jesus has mold on him. When I go up to the second floor, I'm greeted by a disaster. The roof has been thrown down on the second floor, and then it's been raining on it. And it's creating a moldified mush of garbage that's just, the stench is horrendous. I also realized that I'm the first person from the hospital up here. The other ones has not been up here, they don't know yet. The only thing we could do really was to start to dig, because this was constituting about 60% of the beds in our hospital. So this really was a disaster on top of the disasters that we already had. And we started to dig, and from the beginning we didn't even have a shovel, because the hospital didn't have a shovel. So we just had to throw things out on the floor using our bare hands. In the back of my head, a thought went on and on. This hospital is dead. There's no recovery from this. Hi, welcome. This is a story about how Kanban helped a hospital that had no patients, no roof, didn't pay correct salary, no operational permit, became a profitable organization with plenty of patients, with an operational permit and a roof in just 1.5 years. And the driver behind this was Kanban, and I'm very proud and happy to be part of this journey. Today I will stop at just 3 small things. Kanban is many more principles, but I have a shorter period of time today, so I will stop at 3 things. My name is Hammarberg. I work for a small consultancy called Aptitude. I have 1 wife, 2 hobbies, 3 kids. I've been a developer since 1998, mainly on the Microsoft platform, and I've been more and more interested the last 11 or 12 years or so in how you cooperate together. And that's led me to investigate agile methods such as Scrum and the last 6 or 7 years Kanban. Oh, by the way, this is the best Kanban book I ever written. So I was serving the Salvation Army abroad in Indonesia, where they govern 6 hospitals and 17 clinics. And I lived in a small city called Bandung with 10 million people in it. So that was quite the experience for me and my wife and 3 kids. So normally I would go through all the Kanban values, but I've summarized them now, and I want to talk about 3 things, I hope, yeah. Namely, visualization, trust, transparency, accountability, and love. That will be interesting, I hope we get there. So the first thing I want to mention is visualization. We visualized many things during the 1.5 years, but I want to relate a particular story that stuck with me at least. And I hope that you will understand the values of Kanban in a better way in this strange context. So although we had many problems, we realized pretty soon that cash flow was the number one. We could not survive if we didn't get more patients coming into the hospital. In fact, we learned in hindsight that we only had like 5 or 6 weeks before the hospital was bankrupt. But luckily, no one told me before. So the problem is that most people in this hospital, they knew about this and they understood it, but it was more, this is management's problem. So I wanted them to see this problem, but I also wanted them to feel it, because I had an idea that they actually didn't really understood. And I couldn't really blame them, because when we started to calculate like the break-even and financial target, we had to express that in Indonesian rupiahs per month, and that number just becomes ridiculous. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Even if we started to break it down into days, so we got 1 day, it was still 12 million rupees per day, which is an enormous amount of money when you consider that the ladies in the laundry, they earned 1 per month. They could not relate. So we needed something simpler. And we broke it down into how many patients do we need to serve each day? Or rather, how many services do we need to sell? So if you went to a doctor, to the pharmacy, and then got some pills, that were 3 services. And we just averaged out the price, and we came up with 134 patients is needed. And we made a huge diagram in front of the entire staff. We had a morning prayer every morning, and it was about 80 people attending. And every morning we plot in how we were doing. And the result was devastating. Here's the actual diagram. So, because we were doing about average. So what do you think the reaction was when we showed this diagram? Because I had the director of the hospital show this. She was very transparent with this. And the reaction was, meh. No one really cared. Someone was giggling. Someone was doing Facebook, like you. And no one was really paying attention. I was furiated. Why are you not appalled? We are losing money. So I made a new line. Can you see it there? This is the break-even point, and I called it the lose money line. And I said, every day we're below this point, we lost money by having the hospital open. It's not often that you get to hear 80 jaws falling to the floor at the same time, but I did that at this point, because then they understood. So what happened here really? Well, there's a number of things that's in play here. Number of values that we used for the first time in the hospital. That's why they realized what it was all about. And we actually came up with a couple of rules on how we're going to do visualizations in this hospital, in the Bungsu hospital. And it's not really rules, because we break them if we thought it was interesting. So it's the pirate code, right? Here's the rules. First of all, it needs to be big, so that everyone can see it. Our diagram was so big, I actually made a mistake, because I'm about 30 centimeters longer than the average Indonesian. So they couldn't reach the top. But secondly, it needs to be really easy to understand. We had a few people in the hospital that could not read or write. Below this line, they could understand that, right? Below, bad. Above, good. We focused on trends rather than individual numbers, because we were focusing on learning from this. I don't want to punish you with the numbers. I want to learn from them so we can be better. Even the good numbers. If you don't have a target, then measuring something becomes very irrelevant quickly. So you need some kind of target in there. And finally, what we found out was really important was that it moves fast, updates frequently. Otherwise, people will lose interest. Okay, let's talk about trust, transparency, and accountability. This has been mentioned a number of times, and Paul just mentioned it in the previous talk. This is important values. And I want to relate a story now, which I think that this actually saved a life, at least one. The lady in black here, her name is Ibu Elshi. She's the general manager of the hospital, which means that she's in charge of everything that is not finance or health, which is a lot. There's security, there's maintenance, there's drivers, a lot of things. Basically, if you want anything done in the hospital, you go and see Ibu Elshi and she will help you out. She came to my team and asked us for our help because she was overworked. She had a lot of things to do. They were changing all the time due to the fact that we have a morning meeting every morning, changing things that relates to her. And also, people got fed up of waiting for her, so they went around her and went to her staff instead. So she said, I'm just running around in the hospital trying to know what to do, and I don't want to do that anymore because every time I go into a room, I get more work. She was sobbing through that last sentence, and I could totally understand that because that sounds like a horrible thing. So we decided to help her. And the first thing we did was that in the morning meeting, we had a morning meeting every morning with the management team of the hospitals, and we started to talk about some really detailed stuff about maintenance. Which net is the best net to keep rats out of the sewer? In what order should the doctor's name be placed outside the hospital? Stuff like that. So I took one of my few direct decisions as a coach, and I said, okay, from now on, we will not talk about maintenance in this meeting. And I turned to Ibo Elshi and I said, Ibo Elshi, we trust you to do this. You take care of this. If you have any questions, come back to us. Also, could you please report back to us every Friday on the progress? And she took that. Secondly, we helped Ibo Elshi herself to structure her day. This was very basic stuff, but we used some agile techniques. For example, we said, you go around in the hospital for 1 hour, and then that's enough for that day. Then you do some other things that you need to do every day, order new food and stuff like that. And then in the end of the day, we had a 1 hour slack allocated every day for stuff that you didn't have time for, or maybe you could innovate something, or maybe you could have a rest. That was a booked day, so her days looked exactly the same all day. I then talked with her about limiting work in process, and I said, let your maintenance team, let them work on 3 things at the same time, not more than that. I know you have 500 in your backlog, but let them do 3 things. And when I said that, something really strange happened, because she looked up to me, and she got all quiet, and then she said, can I do that? And yes. You can do that. I've never worked in a place where you can decide on how many things you are doing at the same time. That can be some hard conversations on what's most important, but never work on more things. Paul mentioned that this principle from Kanban, this practice from Kanban, has seldom implemented. I've done it, Paul. So what we did actually was that we said no one does any maintenance work unless it's written on a yellow slip, and those slips are in the pocket of Ibo Elshi. You can only get them there. So we regulated how work flowed to the people, and they could only work on that. All right. So what was the outcome? We missed the first reporting because it was a public holiday. It's 35 public holidays in Indonesia. If you want a lot of rest, go work there. So the second week we had the first report from Ibo Elshi, and normally they would do like 2 or 3 things in a week. So I was expecting 6 to 8 and hoping for 10. But Ibo Elshi, she reported 46 items completed. It was such a strange morning meeting because people were laughing and hugging, and we were just shaking our heads in disbelief. How could this be? And the best part of it was that in the middle, there was a new person. Her name was Ibo Elshi. And all of a sudden, she was there as a leader that we didn't see before. And you could hear that in the way that she described the work. My team did this, we fixed this. Remember that old lamp in the kitchen? Fixed. Suda. So I wanted to share with you a little movie that I took when she's going through the numbers. And now check the faces of the other people around her, because they were all hating her actually just 2 weeks before because they were so slow. Oh no, no sound. I hope you heard some of that. So what happened here? Well, it was really simple actually, because we unlocked the awesomeness of AgileByExample. But we did that with some really simple tricks. The first one was that we moved the authority to the information. Imagine in your organization think about how much time you spend moving the information to the authority. AgileByExample, you take care of this. And that was the second thing. We showed her trust, we required some transparency back, and we also gave her accountability for this area. I think these three goes hand in hand. Finally, we made in policies very explicit, and we limit the number of work in process. And that had the profound effect of saving her life. I remember 2 days after we made these changes, she came to me and she said, "My days are so calm." One of the reasons I'm wearing this uniform is that 2 weeks after, she said, "Your arm has fallen down here." So the stitches had went up, and let me fix that for you. And I said, "But you don't have time for that." "I have plenty of time. You made time for me." So I was sitting there without anything on, and she was stitching this sweater. So this particular sweater is extremely important for me, because I remember that. Okay, let's talk about that final part, love. It sounds a little bit big, so it's respect for people. I will not lecture on love. This photo is from the last day at the hospital. 3 minutes after this, I went out of the hospital. And I have not been back yet. And what happened here was something that I expected, because right after this photo, of course I expected a photo. In Indonesia, you take a photo at every possible time. And right after this, they all lined up in a long row, and they all hugged me, and my wife, which I also kind of expected. But what I did not expect was that they were all whispering the same things in my ear. They were saying basically the same thing, but it was a private conversation. They had not talked about that before. So I was hugging them, and they said, "You were friendly. We were bad, and you didn't scream at us. You wanted to help us, even though we were no good." Those things came echoing back again and again. So the true heroes of making this hospital amazing are these people, except me and my wife. We didn't do much there. I very, very seldom, except digging, I didn't do any hands-on work. What we brought there, though, was some love. And it's been bothering me because I cannot really put my finger on what we did, but I tried to summarize it here. And the best testimony to the changes that was done was that a year after I left the hospital, they were still evolving. Remember where they were? They didn't have any patients. 6 months in, we were making money on average every day. 1 year in, we were always above making money. 1 year after I left, they had opened new clinics that they didn't have before. They have started to innovate their business. And they were still using some of the practices to find these things to innovate on. So I came to a very hierarchical organization, like most organizations in Indonesia. So the top decides, and the people below, you just do as you're told. But I confused them a lot. They were often giving me this look. Because I know nothing about running a hospital. I'm a developer. I picked up quite a few things about Agile, but I know nothing about running a hospital. So they said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And this notion of me instead trying to help them to help themselves, right? This coaching idea, that was very strange for them, because I had no formal power. I could not tell them what to do, and I said that to them. I cannot decide, you have to decide. This looks like a good idea. Maybe we should try this. Have you considered? Stuff like that. But I never decide. And I had to repeat many times to them, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that you guys could make this. If I was doing this on my own, I would be really, really terrified. But together we will make this. And I did a really simple little practice. I dubbed this the Brazilian morning walk. Apparently, days never start in Brazil. I hope no one is from Brazil here to can defeat this story. But I have a friend that worked there, and he said mornings in the office never start, because you go around and say hello to everyone in the morning as you arrive. So it's just like 40 people, hello, 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 and then the next person come in, so you never get going. And I tried to implement this, so I actually went around the entire hospital. It's not that big. We were like 150 employees. And I went into every workplace, just peeking my head in, hello. The first couple of days, they were like super scared that the boss man came up by. But after a while, we had some internal jokes, and I always tried to grab something from the kitchen and help out in the laundry or just peeking in. And then after a couple of months, they were asking me things. Do you think we could do this? I had an idea. So that was really cool. But I realized in the hindsight, what I actually did there was something profound. And I didn't think about that because I was very selfish. I was just trying to see that everything was working smoothly. But what I did was actually saying, I see you. Good to have you here. That was what I was saying every morning by just walking around there. We did some other things that never been done there before. I told them that the first time we were above 120, I'm buying you cake. So we bought cake to entire hospital to the price of 10 euros, I think. And then when we broke 130 for the first time, we buy cake. We had this celebration, so we became a team, right? And every morning we presented these numbers. How did we do yesterday? And the whole group, the whole hospital were like, and it's below. And when it was above, yay, we had a celebration together. We didn't even have some really silly celebrations, silly rituals that we did. But that's how we created a team. And that's why I still love these people. I still miss many of them. They are really close to my heart. And I follow through Facebook and other social media, I follow their ups and downs. And I'm so happy that they now have a much nicer way of interacting with each other. And I'm very happy to be part of that organization for a short while. Here's 3 simple principles, practices, that I picked out of Kanban and also from other agile methods that I think helped us to go from a hospital that basically had nothing, that was on the ruin, all the way to becoming a hospital that was innovating the way that they did work on a daily basis. As you probably realize, this is a abbreviation of everything that happened. So if you want to read the whole story, there's a book that's about to be published, I hope. And with that, Pavel, I'm ahead of time, so...
Perfect. Thank you very much,
Marcus.
For
listening.
How did you find your way into this hospital?
How did I find my way into the hospital? So I was there in Indonesia working for the health foundation which govern all these hospitals. This hospital was actually just a couple of 100 meters from my house. So when I learned that they had problems, we went down there to see what we could do. And then we had a little bit of a problem getting their attention. But once the roof fell in and everything, that they had a real sense of urgency. And it was just luckily circumstancing that I was there at the right time. You could call it luck. I'm a Christian. I call it something else. So.
You didn't say what's happened with the roof at the end.
With the roof?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting thing. We limited the number of build-in process when we did the roof. So instead of renovating the entire roof, we only did the central part. So we put on the roof, but we didn't renovate the rest of the floor, only the central part, which was quite interesting actually, because first everyone wanted to renovate all of it, so it looks nice, right? But we didn't have time or money to do that. So we only did the central part, and then we did the other parts on the ends. We did that when the need arose. So that took almost a year before we actually needed to do that. But in the meantime, we could use that central part. So that was also done through the principles of Kanban, actually.
Limiting work in progress.
Limiting work in process
Okay.
when progress when doing a renovation of a roof. I didn't think of that myself.
One more, maybe a little bit odd question, but how do you feel? I mean, you were longer than all other people there, which most likely helps you a lot while speaking to them. Like you were more visible, you were higher.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you feel if you would compare being somebody from Indonesia, same size, trying to do exactly the same work? Because this is what happens to us mostly.
Yeah.
We are more or less the same age, same size, and my feeling is this physical attributes give us a lot of power in terms of playing with people, doing work like that.
No, I've been thinking a lot about that actually. Someone remarked that it's mostly women in the hospital as well, and that also maybe could be related to. But I think that the strangest thing for them was that I was not from their culture. So they were a little bit more open maybe to the ideas that I had. That was really strange in their terms, right? When I said to AgileByExample, we trust you, you take care of this, no need to check with us. That was unheard of. But but I had to be really careful about that as well, because as you said, I had some power just being an outsider, basically, in many ways. And I had to be careful with that, so I always tried to push it back to letting them know that they were interested. The last day, the director of the hospital, she actually said something that was really good to hear. She said, "We want to thank you for being our guide on this journey." And at that point I realized, okay, so they actually understood what I was after. I was not their leader, I was a guide. And I was really proud to hear that. So I hope that answers your question.